Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Man from Hildebrand. I would also like to thank some new subscribers this week. I think I had about 5, but hey, it all kind of adds up and counts up. So last episode it caused a bit of conversation, which is always good. I just kind of find that when I post the videos on the socials, people don't necessarily actually watch the video. They just comment and respond to the headline of the video, which is kind of frustrating because it's like, well, if you watch the video, you will get my point. The last episode, my point was, why is Never Say Never Again in Casino Royale 1967 so kind of isolated and, kind of so sort of categorized and not included. Okay, if you don't like the film, fair enough. I don't like Spectre. I have a lot of issues with that film, which I will probably talk about in another episode. But if you don't like Never Say Never Again, or you don't enjoy the Casino Royale spoof, but to keep using the excuse, oh, it's not Eon, it's not official, it's not a Bond film, it's just a bit boring. The bottom line is it's still part of the Bond universe. It is now all owned by Amazon and MGM. It's all part of the same package, which, will we actually see them included in 4K box sets? Will we now see merchandise related to them films in the future? Who knows? With this year celebrating the 20th anniversary of Casino Royale, I'm just going to kind of dwell on it and kind of just express my thoughts on that, because it's just crazy to think that it's 20 years. 20 years ago, I would have been 19. I would have not long have passed my test. I was living at home with my parents. So I was absolutely raking it in, because obviously when you live at home with your parents, it's much cheaper. And I would have probably been spending a lot of time with Pam and her 5 sisters as well. So yeah, it's and the thing is, okay, we are still celebrating 40 years of A View to a Kill and 30 years of GoldenEye, but those particular anniversaries don't really kind of mean anything to me, because I wasn't born when A View to a Kill was released, and when GoldenEye was first released, I wasn't really into Bond then. But however, with Casino Royale back in 2006, I'd been a Bond fan for 9 years, so I was kind of fully balls deep into the fandom. The first Bond film I ever saw at the cinema was Tomorrow Never Dies back in 1997, and I was 12 years old, and I have seen all the Bond films at the cinema since then. But Casino Royale is probably the kind of only one which I can really truly remember being embraced in the whole buzz and everything surrounding it. 2005, Daniel Craig was announced as the 6th actor to play Bond. And for a Bond fan, this was the first time I'd experienced a so-called change of guard. And I can remember it being all over the tabloids, all over the newspapers. I can remember coming home from work, and on all the news channels, you obviously had that famous clip of Daniel Craig coming down the Thames with the Royal Navy, with all the world press awaiting him. And then they had a press conference, and I can always remember one of the journalists saying, who's the better Bond girl, Kate Moss or Sienna Miller? He wisely chose not to answer that. So yeah, and I could always remember, obviously Martin Campbell was coming back, and they said, we're going to be doing Casino Royale, and we're going to be going right back to the beginning, exploring, Bond's early career. And obviously Casino Royale was the very first Bond novel. And the thing that kind of totally flummoxed me was, I was thinking, okay, if it's a first novel, and they're going to make it into a film, does that mean that this is going to be set in the 1950s? Is this going to be sort of pre-Connery? You know, and the thing with Daniel Craig is obviously, you know, when he was announced as Bond, he had so much hate. He had the media absolutely hated him, and a lot of people just didn't like him. I mean, of course, he had that, you know, Craig not Bond kind of outfit, which were totally against him and was trying to boycott the film. Whoever was behind that, please come forward because you're a cunt. And the thing is, Daniel Craig, he in the end proved them wrong because he did an absolutely fantastic job. I mean, people were kind of slated him thinking, oh, well, you know, he's really scrawny, he's got long hair, he doesn't look like Bond. But yet, you go back to 1994 when Pierce Brosnan was announced, Pierce had long hair and a beard. But that was fine because it was Pierce. So, yeah, it's same old, and whoever the next Bond actor will be, they will get slated straight away. It's just a fine example that you clearly can't please everybody. And this was kind of, sort of, kind of marketed as a reboot. Now, back in, you know, a reboot back in 2005 was a relatively new concept to cinema. I mean, Batman Begins was the first film to be, you know, classed as a reboot of a sort of famous iconic character. And Casino Royale was also classed as a reboot. But retrospectively, I always argue that, well, you know, GoldenEye was a reboot. You know, Pierce Brosnan's interpretation of the character was a reboot. So I wouldn't say it was the first time that the franchise had seen a reboot. And it also kind of stated that Casino Royale would be an origin story. To this day, I fail to see that. I mean, okay, yes, we see Bond become a 00, which we've never seen before. We see him early on in his career, which we've never seen before, but I certainly wouldn't call it an origin story. Skyfall acts as more of an origin story than Casino Royale does, and I kind of see First Light even acting as more of an origin story than what Casino Royale did. May time 2006, we got the first teaser trailer, and that just absolutely fucking blew my mind. I can remember watching that and just being absolutely mesmerised by the old, you know, they kind of had snippets of the action scenes, and it was just absolutely immense. And I can remember just sort of, you know, going out that day, just walking down the street, minding my own business. I think I might have gone to town or something, going to some shops. And, you know, I was kind of, in my head, I was absolutely buzzing because I had just seen the trailer to probably one of the greatest Bond films to have ever been made. And yet, you know, you look around and people are just sort of totally oblivious to what your mind is experiencing. You know, I'm thinking, my God, you have no idea what I've just seen. And people were just sort of going about the day normally. And I was there absolutely kind of raving and buzzing because I've just seen an absolute fantastic trailer for Casino Royale. And I think that was the turning point where a lot of people thought, yeah, okay, Craig's, you know, Craig is the man. And then obviously, and then in the summertime, we then got a theatrical trailer, which was even better. And then come October, November time when the film was released, I can remember being at work and being in the car and listening to the radio. And you had Colin Murray and Edith Bowman doing a great big segment on Casino Royale. I can remember even Jonathan Ross doing film 2006. And they, you know, Jonathan Ross going to Pinewood to the 007 stage, interviewing Daniel Craig and Eva Green. You know, Daniel Craig was on all the magazine covers. It was absolutely massive. And, you know, for me, it was kind of the first time I'd experienced a new actor. So the marketing and the publicity was really ramping up, which I can remember so clearly as if it was yesterday. I can remember like seeing Sony posters with Daniel Craig splattered all over them and like Ford and all that. See, you know, you had Chris Cornell, You Know My Name playing on the radio. And then, the film was then released. I went and seen it in my local cinema. I went with my parents, my great uncle, who's sadly no longer with us, and my cousin, and one of my parents' friends, and we got there, and we was there probably about 6:15 time, and we was in the cinema in the foyer, right at the door next to the barriers where the stewards were. And I can always remember within 10 minutes, because we was first in the queue, and I could always remember within 10 minutes that queue just was end up outside the cinema. And it was, I mean, I dread to think, I don't know how many people would have been there. Would have thought it would have been probably everybody from Nottinghamshire attended this first evening. And for a Bond fan to see that and to see the amount of people was just a huge buzz. And yeah, and obviously they let us in. We went in, took a seat, had the traders and stuff. On the way to the cinema, it kind of all finally fell into place, because I said to my cousin, I says, look, to kind of understand this film, you've got to just forget about everything that's gone before. You've got to just wipe the slate clean. And that's what I did. I can remember the old pre-title sequence, and you saw, Daniel Craig kicking the shit out of that guy in the taller cubicle. It was filmed in black and white, really grainy. And there's a moment where he was kind of sort of drowning the bloke in the sink. And for a moment, Bond thought it succeeded, thought it killed him. And Craig did it absolutely fantastically, where you could tell that Bond was shook up. Bond didn't enjoy doing what he had just done. And Bond doesn't like killing. It's quite, clear in the novels that Bond absolutely hates killing, especially if it's cold blood. And, it takes a kind of, a kind of person to actually kill. And, you could tell that he just absolutely hated it. A few minutes later, it then transpires that he didn't actually kill him there and then. But as he picks his gun up, he turns around and shoots him, which then forms a gun barrel. That then went into the title sequence. And I can always remember straight away knowing that particular edit version of the theme song was different to what we'd heard before on the radio. This, and unfortunately, I don't think this particular version is actually available anywhere. It might be on YouTube, but officially it's never been released, and it's just, I don't know. There's more instrument. There's I mean the introduction's got more brass, a lot more strings, and I just absolutely love that film version. And usually the film version's always that little bit better than the ordinary radio versions. And then you went into the old kind of Madagascar, chase sequence on the construction site, and with me being in the construction industry, I can actually relate to what's happening. I know what's what, and I kind of know whether or not that's possible. I know that shooting somebody with a pasload with a nail gun isn't possible, because in order to activate the nail gun, you've actually got to press it against somebody. So you can't just go firing it willy-nilly like Bond does. But yeah, and also what was interesting is that the film actually opens up with a construction site and then closes with a construction site. I thought, okay, is that kind of like a subtle meaning? In the old action sequence was absolutely brilliant, and then you get him jumping from crane to crane, and straight away this was a different kind of Bond. I mean, you certainly never saw Pierce or Roger do what Daniel Craig was doing, and from then on you kind of knew that Craig sort of Bond, if he wanted to get somebody, he will do everything in his power to get that person. It doesn't matter if he's stealing vehicles or wrecking the joint or whatever. He will do what he's got to do to get the job done. And also, what I loved about it is they had a Mondeo in there. That car got slated, as if Bond would drive a Mondeo. Well, it's no different to him driving a BMW. A Mondeo is seen as a rep's car, and the thing with Bond is, is a spy, so he's got to blend in to sort of everyday kind of surroundings. So a spy in a Mondeo just seems perfect. Plus, I had a Mondeo myself. I had the Mark III. The one he had was the Mark IV. And it's not until, Bond goes to the Casino Royale in Montenegro, as soon as he walks through there, that's where the novel starts. I mean, the actual novel itself's not very long at all. I think it's like 180 pages. As Purvis and Wade had said, that if they were to adapt that novel, you'd only be looking at about an hour and a half of a film. So they had to kind of create this backstory and kind of, sort of modernize, the villain's motive and why he had to, get his money back. So they introduced all this old Skyfleet business, and then obviously introduced the, the old Miami action sequence. And at the same time, kind of introducing, the angle that, Bond has just committed his first 2 kills. And of course, from then on, and then you had the introduction of Jeffrey Wright's Felix Leiter. And then you had the torture sequence. And Purvis and Wade said that if they were to do Casino Royale, they had to keep the torture sequence in there, keep the death of Vesper, and keep the, that bit, the bitch's deadline in there. And yeah, I mean, that film, I mean, I kind of walked away thinking that wasn't your bog standard Bond film. And from then on, I was thinking, well, I now want to see Bond, go to the petrol station. I want to see him fill the car up. I want to see him pop into Tesco's and grab a bite to eat. I want him to, physically use a urinal, because Daniel Craig's interpretation of Bond was just so human and so gritty, so realistic. I mean, he was getting beaten up just as much as he would have beaten the bad guys up. I mean, of course, you had that stairwell fight, which led to that brilliant, shower sequence with Bond and Vesper, which kind of just showed their vulnerability. And, you had that perfect shot of Bond being in front of the mirror, wiping his wounds. It was just, yes, such a powerful, realistic, so humane film. I mean, Bond was now, Bond wasn't no longer Superman. He was actual human. And, I mean, the friend we went with, she kind of went in thinking that she wasn't going to enjoy it, but she actually did. And a lot of sort of females who I've spoken to after, they would have gone in with their husbands and partners, and they just absolutely loved it. And I just thought, yeah, because it's not your typical Bond film. The typical Bond film is, Bond going to save the world and, walking away from a fight or explosion with his hair still in place. But this one was just more realistic. It wasn't a happy ending. Bond's lover did die at the end. So they obviously had that emotional kind of level to it as well. Plus the fact, I think, it kind of did help when Craig walked out of the sea and you kind of just saw how ripped he was. I mean, even that kind of made me turn the other way a bit. I thought, wow. And then probably for a few seconds I thought, I might have just become gay here. But then Solange came trotting along on the back of a horse in a bikini and I was okay. So yeah, it was just a totally different kind of Bond film, especially when you compare it to the film we had before, which was Die Another Day. Daniel Craig kind of always said, that he was just going in and doing this, and if it fails, it fails. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But they all went in with low expectations, because the formula had slightly changed. There was kind of doing something a little bit different. And, believe it or not, Pierce Brosnan was wanting to do Casino Royale. Pierce had signed up to do a 5th film. Casino Royale was offered to Pierce, and Pierce had said yes, but he was asking for too much money, and Barbara and Michael just wasn't willing to accept the offer. How much he was asking for, I don't know, but a lot of people say that, Michael and Barbara wanted to get rid of him because they were stuck. They didn't know where else to go. The truth of the matter is that Brosnan was asking for too much money. That's when Purvis and Wade had to kind of rejig the story to kind of write it so it was introducing a new actor. And and the other thing is yeah, we've got Judi Dench, and I always see originally that they took Judi Dench out for dinner, and they kind of said, we're going to start fresh, we're going to have a new actor, kind of in the sense of telling her that they want to get rid of her and recast her. But the first thing Judy said was, okay, great, when do I start? That then meant that Martin Campbell, Broccoli or Wilson just couldn't have the heart to tell her that they wanted to recast her. So they then reluctantly went with Judy. And then obviously in Skyfall, that's, when they kind of did eventually say, look, we're going to kill you off. A lot of people who, a lot of Bond fans who generally don't like Daniel Craig as an actor or his interpretation as Bond have always said that, Casino Royale was probably his best film. Casino Royale is one of his best films, as well as Skyfall and No Time to Die. Quantum of Solace has grown on me, but as I said earlier, I find that the weakest of his films is Spectre. I think I might have gone to the cinema 4 times to see Casino Royale. So I went on the Thursday night with my parents, my uncle and family. I went on my own on the Sunday, and then I might have gone like the following week with a couple of other mates, and then went again with a few other mates. So in total, I'd seen it at the cinema 4 times. And then when it was released on home video, DVD, Blu-ray, it was constantly, I watched it over and over. Casino Royale, I must have seen loads of times, all in different kind of environments, different houses, because it just happened to be there. It shares a lot of similarities with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Not only is it faithful to the source material, both the love interest kind of sadly end up dying. Both films feature an Aston Martin DBS, and both films are kind of the first film of an actor. With the Majesty's Secret Service, it was Lazenby's first, one and only film. Casino Royale was kind of planned to be Daniel Craig's one and only film, but it, did so well that they soon got the next Bond film in production. Even David Arnold, years ago when the film was about to come out, he was saying how the score is very similar to Her Majesty's, in the sense there's a lot of melodies and a lot of different themes and stuff throughout. But yes, anyway, Casino Royale, I just thought, I'm going to just try and, speak about the old retrospective kind of sort of look on it, and just give my views on here and there. So, what is happening in the world of Bond? So, on May the 12th, Sky Arts have released a brand new documentary titled Ian Fleming and the Curse of James Bond, The Spy Who Killed Me. Now, this is narrated by Helen Bonham Carter, who I've always thought would make a brilliant Eva Fleming if they ever did an adaptation of Nicholas Shakespeare's The Complete Man. It also features kind of contributions from William Boyd, who of course wrote Solo, and Nicholas Shakespeare himself. I should imagine this would be looking kind of at the later end of his life and the old court case with Kevin McClory. Whether or not there's any new material or any kind of new bits that have never really been documented before, I don't know. I still need to see it. But yeah, they always say that the old court case with Kevin McClory is probably what finished Fleming off. And it is sad because Fleming died a month before Goldfinger was premiered. And obviously Goldfinger, that was when Bond Mania went absolutely crazy. So yeah, it's kind of sad really that Fleming had, for the past 20 odd years, had wanted to, make his millions, and kind of when he was about to, he, passed it. Sky Arts, 12th of May, brand new documentary, James Bond, Ian Fleming and the Curse of James Bond. Also on May the 20th, Waterstones in Piccadilly, London, doing a doing a Q&A with Kim Sherwood and Charlie Higson. I would imagine that this would be sort of the build-up and the promotion to Hurricane Room, which is Kim Sherwood's final 00 novel. A few people have already had advanced copies of that, and I must say that there's been quite a lot of positivity around that. They said, this is the book that we've been waiting for. It's the best one out of the three of them. Which I kind of, with Double or Nothing, that was, with what I've heard, it was literally tick boxing. It was, just to try and aim, trying to please the political correctness police, trying to please the woke brigade. If anything, it seemed to be the perfect kind of gift pack. If you was to join the Labour Party or the Green Party, even if you kind of read the book, it might even make your tits grow bigger. And then the second one, A Spy Like Me, is meant to be much better. I think the first one, she was obviously trying to set the scene, and the third one seems to be even better. Whether or not it's perfect, I don't know, but with these advanced readings, it's meant to be an improvement from the previous two. I am going to get it because I've got the other two. So that's on the 20th of May at Waterstones in Piccadilly, London. Now products. Mini GT, they are like banging them out like no tomorrow. In the last episode, I mentioned that they released a few more. I forgot to mention that they also released the BMW Z3 from GoldenEye. Within the past week, they've announced that they are releasing the Aston Martin DBS from Casino Royale and the Land Rover Defender from Skyfall. How many there is, I don't know, but they really seem to be churning these little bad boys out. I'm going to try and aim to get myself one a month, I think. £20 a month isn't exactly breaking the bank. Last week, on the old socials, somebody had posted a First Light Lana Del Rey 7-inch vinyl. I'm thinking, that's interesting. Why has this not been all over social media? Why is this not available to buy on the 007 store? And where are the track listings? Of course, this is fake. Somebody's, trying to basically pull the wool over our eyes by making out that they've got the Lana Del Rey single. Anybody could just print a graphic off, and anybody could just print a sticker off and place it on a vinyl. This vinyl looked like it had 3 songs on each side. So what the other 5 songs were, we don't know because there's no track listings. Music by Lana Del Rey, lyrics by Tom Arnold. Who the fuck's Tom Arnold? Whoever you are, nice try. You can't pull the wool over our eyes. Also on the socials, I saw somebody had posted a First Light commemorative Gillette razor. Now, in the words of Lana Del Rey herself, is it real or is it fake? I still don't know. I actually went to the supermarket the other day to have a look, and I couldn't find any. It looks absolutely fantastic. But the last time we got sort of a Bond related Gillette was 10 years ago, 2015 when Spectre had released a commemorative Gillette razor set. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if you own one, then please leave comments on the video. I've also received my Thunderball prop replica, which you might be able to see over there, from Factory Entertainment. Yeah, I really like it. It comes in a really fancy little case. I mean, obviously about 15 years ago they did the first issue of it with both the Diner of the Day breather and the Thunderball breather. I sadly missed out on that. And then they've only just recently reissued it. Now, whether or not the kind of design is improved, I don't know. They usually tend to sort of tweak things and sort of make it a bit more accurate. But yeah, otherwise, I really like it. All right, I think that's it for today. But yes, it was just basically a kind of a celebration of Casino Royale. Kind of my sort of take on it, in like a retrospective sort of time warp, if you like. And then just a bit of a few Bond products. So I think that's it for today. I will probably see you next time. Hopefully we should have some more news to talk about. Thank you for your support. Don't forget to like and share and leave a comment in the box below. And yes, I will see you next time. Cheerio for now.